we're going to be talking about a petition against the GNL pipeline today. However, there's another petition that is in the description that is very important, put forth in the House of Commons, about adding environmental rights to SEPA, which is the Canadian Environmental Protections Act. So go sign that. It's very important and cool. Here with us today, we have our very own Shirley Barnea, who is a part of Fridays for Future Montreal. Shirley, do you want to tell us what Fridays for Future is?
Yes, so Fridays for Future, as you may know, is an international organization of youth activists who are demanding that governments do more to stop climate change. It was started by Greta Thunberg, who decided to strike from school to demand climate justice. And now there are branches all over the world. So I'm part of Fridays for Future Montreal, which is our local branch here. And we've been actively fighting against this pipeline through online actions and strikes.
So let's start by just establishing what this pipeline is and how it fits in environmentally.
So the GNL Quebec pipeline is a proposed project that would be an extension to an existing pipeline going from Ontario to Quebec, and it would reach the tip of the Fjord du Saguenay, at which point there would be a gas liquefaction plant to turn the natural gas that's brought through the pipeline to liquefy it so that it can be shipped. And that natural gas would be coming from fracking. 85% of it would be coming from fracking, which, as we know, is really horrible for the environment and has many health risks as well. And the final liquefied product would be methane, which, as we also know, is actually more polluting than carbon dioxide, which would then be shipped through the fjord, which is a marine protected area and home of the only 800 belugas left in the St. Lawrence River. So this gas would be shipped through the fjord, through the St. Lawrence River to international markets. And so a 300-meter long supertanker full of methane, which could explode at any moment, would be going through a marine protected area every single day.
So let's just talk about the belugas a bit. So that sounds like a pretty big threat to biodiversity here in Quebec, which is obviously something very important. Can you speak to that a bit?
Absolutely. So this really is huge in terms of the detrimental effects it would have for the belugas and just for biodiversity as a whole. The Fjord du Saguenay is a huge biodiversity hotspot. It's, I believe, the only marine protected area we have. So that's also just kind of inconceivable that they would even think to bring methane in super tankers through a marine protected area. It's also a very big part of the tourism industry in Quebec, which is big. Many people go whale watching there, as we know, so that industry would be affected as well, and the whole ecosystem of the St. Lawrence would be affected, of course.
Let's talk a bit about what this petition is, where did it come from, and how is Fridays for Future involved?
Okay, so to clarify, there are a few different movements going around against this pipeline. First of all, we have a petition that's over a year old and has over 88,000 signatures from people all over Quebec. And this is just a general resistance to this pipeline. Second, we have the public consultation that was carried out by the Bureau d'Audience Publique sur l'Environnement. So this body will make a recommendation to the government on whether or not to construct this pipeline. And so they had a public consultation in which any individual or organization can submit a text about their position on this project. So that ended on Thursday, October 22nd. So that was also a big part of what was going on. Many people were giving in text in opposition to this pipeline. And finally, we have the big news of the day, which was that organizations, student associations representing 300,000 students from across Quebec in CEGEPs and universities have positioned themselves against this pipeline. So that's huge. That's the biggest mobilization of this type ever in Quebec history.
I would just like to just quickly touch in on the public consultation. Right now, this is being filmed on November 1st. Has a verdict come out from the consultation yet?
Not yet. We're still awaiting their verdict. There are a lot of steps to the consultation. So right now, I believe there are still people presenting their opinions in a public manner. Like, so now it's not people giving in documents; it's people actually giving a presentation, and that should end soon. And then they'll debate and look at everything and give their verdict to the government by the end of the year.
Open right now, I have the petition, which will also be in the description, as well as some further reading and resources so you can really educate yourself on this topic, because obviously we are just scratching the surface. And there's a quote here that says, this project alone would generate around 50 million tons of greenhouse gases per year from extraction to combustion, the equivalent of adding 10 million new cars to our roads every year. Shirley, can you just tell us a bit about the greenhouse gas impact, the emissions impact of this pipeline?
Absolutely. So the government really is trying to sell this project, believe it or not, as green. It's a textbook example of greenwashing. So they're saying that natural gas is better than oil or coal, and so that when this is sold to international markets, it's actually going to help their transition. However, the problem is that, first of all, it's not actually better if you consider the entire lifespan of the product, including the extraction, transporting it to international markets, as well as like the production and refinery and liquefying it. It's actually not less polluting than coal. So that's just classic misinformation. Like, burning it in and of itself may be a bit better, but like the entire life cycle is not better. And even if it was better, we can't spend our energies working on this energy that's slightly less polluting. Like, that's not going to be enough. The amount of greenhouse gases generated by this project alone would cancel out all the greenhouse gas emissions reductions that Quebec has accomplished since 1990, and would make it impossible for Quebec to meet our commitments that we made in the Paris Accord.
Wow. Just remind everyone that we have further reading and resources in the description, so please go to town. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, an idea in kind of the environmentalist world emerged of a just recovery, either brought forward or at least popularized by 350.org. Can you talk a bit about how just recovery fits into stopping this pipeline and what just recovery means to you?
Absolutely. So a just recovery, if you don't know, is basically the idea that the recovery, the economic and social recovery coming out of this pandemic must be in a way that brings us forward in terms of making progress to protect the environment. And that if we just relaunch the economy as it was before, it's going to be so much harder. It's going to be so much harder to make that ecological transition after. So basically, the idea is that right now we are in an economic recession. And so to use that to our advantage in a way, to restart in a way that's much more environmentally friendly. So for example, instead of just helping, for example, the oil and gas sector just recover as it was before, helping that sector transition to a more sustainable.
Absolutely. I believe in 2016, the oil and gas sector made up almost a quarter of all of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. So definitely working with that very important part of Canada's economy to become more green so that we can meet the Paris goals, which we are not lined up to do at the moment, is definitely important. Again, if you want to sign the Non Merci GNL petition, it is the first link in the description. So go ahead and join the other over 88,000 people saying no to this pipeline.
And so the way that this pipeline fits into the just recovery is that we can't go on building new fossil fuel projects. That's just going to bring us backwards. To transition our economy and our society into something more sustainable, first we have to stop building new fossil fuel projects, and then we phase out the ones that exist and we transition the ones that exist. But the first step is to make sure that this doesn't get built, because projects like these last for tens of years, and then just they lock in so many greenhouse gas emissions that once it's built, of course it's going to be used for many, many years. And so it's of utmost importance that it doesn't pass.
It's not something that is there one day and you can just take it off the next. Pipelines are huge, huge commitments, giant pieces of infrastructure that, as Shirley said, last for tens of years. Something that the government would argue that the GNL pipeline is good for is that since Quebec is so based on hydroelectric energy, that this is actually a really good version of fossil fuels, and that, this is better than the classic pipeline situation because we have that hydroelectric base. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so the one of the classic arguments made by the government is that since we have hydroelectric energy, the fossil fuels that we're producing are somehow green because we're liquefying them using hydro turbines instead of using more fossil fuels. But that doesn't change the product itself. So, of course, yeah, that reduces some of the emissions, but again, it's that situation where it just ridiculous. I mean, yes, we're producing polluting products in a slightly less polluting way, but as we know, that's also not enough, because still, if you consider the entire life cycle of this product, the natural gas is not less polluting than your average coal. So that's just another case of misinformation. Like, they're bringing up a little kernel of truth, but that's not the whole truth. And also, I mean, the fact that we have hydroelectric energy is just another reason why we have absolutely no reason to be building a pipeline right now. We have enough renewable energy to be powering all of Quebec, which we are doing. And something that Quebec also does, we sell some of our energy to the United States and to Ontario. So why not build on that? Why not use our renewable energy to do good things? I don't know. We could build solar panels with our renewable energy. Why should we be putting that into creating an energy that's just going to be bringing everyone else back into the past?
It is said that the liquefaction plant will generate over 7,000 jobs, indirect and direct jobs, during construction and thereafter. So that seems like a pretty solid economic benefit. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so um, the economy, of course, is the main argument put forth for this pipeline, but there are actually many issues. So, first of all, it's always seen as like a project for Quebec, by Quebec, it's going to help Quebec. But if you look a little deeper, you actually see that almost all the investors are American, and the company building this pipeline is American. So, and in addition, most of the investors are situated in tax havens. So not only are they not helping Quebec, they're also not helping the United States. So this is just a pipeline that's going to be at the detriment of our natural environment and of the population of Quebec. And it's going to help individual people become even more rich. So that's another big misconception. Just because the name is GNL Quebec does not mean the company is from Quebec. So this is again an instance of us not being shown the whole truth. In addition, many economists have actually positioned themselves against this pipeline, arguing that the economic benefits are not actually that big. And in addition, even if the economic benefits may seem great in the next few years, we can't forget that fossil fuels are a dying industry. Like it or not, eventually the world is going to transition away from these energies towards renewable sources. And we can't be investing so much into a new fossil fuel project. Like, the value of fossil fuels is only going to go down from now. So even just from a purely economic standpoint, it makes no sense to invest so much in an industry of the past. If we want to secure our revenue, the best way of doing that is to invest in renewable energy that's only going to grow in the years to come.
Is there anything you would like to add, Shirley? Any points you wanted to make? Figures you'd like to bring up? Ideas you had? Inspirations?
So that pretty much covers it. But just to recap, this pipeline is a complete disaster. It's sold by the government as benefiting Quebec as a green energy because of the hydro electricity used in the production and because natural gas is better than coal. But when looked at over the entire life cycle of the product, that is actually revealed to be false. It's just as polluting. Don't forget that 85% of the natural gas produced will come from fracking, which we know heightens the risk of earthquakes and contaminated water and various health risks. And the final product will be liquefied methane, which is more polluting than carbon dioxide, which will be shipped in super tankers through a marine protected area home of the 800 remaining belugas in the St. Lawrence River and a biodiversity hotspot. And the proceeds from this pipeline will be going to wealthy Americans living in tax havens. So really, there is no benefit to this project whatsoever, and it will only bring us backwards. This project alone would cancel all of the efforts Quebec has made since 1990 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It would emit around 500 million tons of carbon dioxide and make us unable to meet the agreements we've made in the Paris Accord. It would go completely against the principle of a just recovery and would just go against our ecological transition. And there is really no need for us to be producing fossil fuels. We have so much abundant renewable energy in Quebec that it's just completely pointless.
The link to this petition is the first one in the description, as well as other resources if you want to dive deeper into this, see different points of view, expand on these points a little bit more. And thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Bye. I had a note I was going to bring up greenwashing. I'm glad you did. Cute. Belugas. I'm going to talk to Karina about that maybe.